Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to talk about my introduction and learning process through music, thanks to Jython music and the Python library, Pinon, that was created by Pedro Kroger. Who here has a hobby or a skill set that they're really good at, but has nothing to do with programming, if I can have a show of hands? See, that's good. It's healthy. So, with this process and journey, I realized that leveraging something you're good at to learn another skill is quite effective. It's helped me a lot. And in this situation, it was music, in particular, piano pieces by Beethoven. If you haven't realized, he's out there playing on the computer. So how did I get to this spot? A year ago, I decided to go ahead and pursue Python as a programming language. I wanted to become a programmer. I realized what I wanted to do when I grow up. And I decided to sign up for the Python users group out in Hawaii. Now, with the Python users group, the organizers were very supportive, and they encouraged everyone to come up with a project for show and tell. I was really excited. I was like, I'm going to do this. Oh my goodness, in 2 months, I'm going to go up there and show them a project I worked on. But the problem was, I don't know Python. Overexcited, but rightfully so. So I decided to do some research and take a look at what Python can do. I was like, well, let me do web scraping. Apparently that's very popular with Python, or build a mobile application, or build a website. Why don't I go ahead and get into data science? Because according to Google search results, data science and Python go really well together. The problem was, at that time, I wasn't ready. All the material that was available online for me to learn Python, to learn that language, were very intimidating, even for materials that was intended for beginners. So I had to go back to the drawing board and research what I wanted to do. What was I good at? So I looked up salsa dancing plus Python, nothing. Gardening plus Python, not exactly the snakes I need for this. And I decided to look at music plus Python. So that's how I felt before looking for music. But the top of the search results, I found out that there was an environment called Jython music. So Jython is the implementation of the Python programming language designed for the Java platform. They had a project called Jython Music that had an environment called JEM, which stands for Jython Environment Music, which was fantastic because it appeared unbreakable, so no matter what I did or inputted, it was perfectly fine. It either played the music I was trying to code, or it did not play the music whatsoever. So yes, appearing sturdy and safe, perfect for the beginner in me. So it's an open source environment intended for programmers and musicians to explore both coding and music. It's really easy to download. After this, you can go to jythonmusic.org, you'll see a zip file, click download, and poof, you'll see an environment that allows you to input letters and time. And you can click play right in that environment. So now that I found my environment, I had to figure out, okay, so what is my first project going to be? It's going to be music, it's going to deal with classical music, let's figure out Beethoven, but there's so many pieces. So I decided on Symphony No. 5. I can read the music. My end game was to play the music with code. The in-between, I'm not quite sure how to do that. So let's go ahead and spend some time reading the Jython music book and the website. What do I know now? What I knew then is that I had a G, 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 an E flat, F, 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 and D. How am I going to translate that in the environment to get dun, 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 dun? I didn't know then. So what did I know then? I knew the keyboard. My first note was a G, but if you look at the keyboard, there are several Gs. How am I going to tell the code or tell the environment that I want this particular G right in the middle of the keyboard? The thing with these environments and these libraries, they have different interpretations of what the center of the keyboard is. With the Jython environment, the number 4 indicated the center of the keyboard. So it would have to be G4, 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 E flat or D sharp 4, F4, 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 and D4. Was I done yet? No. Because apparently in music programming, hello world is defined as the note value octave value and also time duration. So now that I have the note and I have the octaves, I have to figure out, okay, what's the time here? Let's play this by ear. Fast, fast, long, fast, 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 long. Let's see how that translates. So as I mentioned earlier, the fourth octave in Jython environment is 4. In the Pinon library, which I'll talk about later, it is 5. And there's this engraving application called Lilypond. Apparently it's this quotation mark, and that's the center of the keyboard. I don't understand why though, yeah. All right, so now get back to our end game here. We're going to play dun 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 dun, dun 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 dun. I know it's a G, I know it's the fourth octave. Now, how am I going to do this with the Jython environment for music? That's how it looked like. I would have 2 lines here, my pitches and my duration. I had my list of notes along with their octaves, and then the second line would be my durations that correspond with the pitches. So I knew that I needed 8th note for the G's, and I need a whole note for the D sharp, and I need an 8th note for the F in the center of the keyboard, and then I would need a whole note. Again, once you have your themes and once you have your phrases and you know what you want to include, you can click the button play, and hopefully you get that noise that you want. Dun, 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 dun. But I'm not going to do that for you right now because I don't want to ruin it. I have something else for you at the end with a different file, but it's going to be the same thing, hopefully. What other things can you do with Jython? So there's a list of libraries available. If you don't know how to compose or read music yet, there are examples for you to look at. What you're seeing right now is a musical code for Jython. It's called the Autumn Leaves. It's jazz music. You can play with it, click play, get something really nice. You can also delete all those notes and those lines if you want something really short. You can also change the notes if you want. It's fairly simple. You really don't have to write a file. You don't have to upload anything. You don't have to do anything on SoundCloud at all. You can just play that music right there on that environment, which is why I liked it a lot. It was very simple, it was safe for me, it appeared unbreakable, and I didn't have to do any pip install actually. Just click download, voila, magic. But I wanted something more. At some point, more like 5 months later, I was like, I want to edit this music on a music editing application. I want to put it on AirSketch. I want to put it on SoundCloud and put it up in the world. I don't want to have to convert the Python file into a Lilypond file and then convert it to something else. I just wanted to write on my command line and then write a MIDI file. And I was able to do that. After much research, more like a couple of minutes, I found the Pinon library by Pedro Kroger. So it accompanies a book. It's called Music for Geeks and Nerds. It's intended for programmers to learn music. But with this experience, I found out that it is as equally motivating and helpful for people who have a musical background who want to learn programming and the basic structures of Python. Treat notes as objects. That's fantastic. It's actually chapter 4, and there's a free download if you're interested. I have no relation to Pedro, so if I'm tooting his horn, it's because I love the book. Now again, this is where I start. I'm going to attempt to play Python, utilize the music code to play Beethoven's Fifth. Here, I have my C notes and my G notes and all the notes here. As I mentioned earlier, the center of the keyboard differs. The library and the environment differs when it comes to what the center of the keyboard is all about. With Pinon, Pedro has a function that basically identifies the center of the keyboard as the 5th octave. Here, he has this function that identifies the name in relation to a number. C basically is a 0. So note name for a 5, he calls it an F. A note name for a 0 is a C, and a note name for 60 is C as well. This is another difference from the Jython environment for music. Rather than just using letters, I can actually utilize numbers for note names in Pedro's Pinon. Here's a visual of how I broke this down, or how he broke this down. So 0 is a C, half note up, D flat or C sharp is going to be a 1. 2 is a D, half step up is a 3. This makes music learning a bit more complicated, but it really isn't. All right, so the wonderful thing here with Pinon is if I want to compose music, I'm going to need notes. If I'm going to need notes, I'm going to need some sort of sequence, and then eventually I'm going to need time, and then I'm going to need a function to, or a capability to play it on some sort of player. But let's take the first step with notes. Default settings in Pinon here, you have A, we define that will become a C, and the octave of that letter C is the fifth, which is the center of the keyboard. The default, not the default, but the value of that C is a 0. The default volume for a lot of these letters and numbers is going to be 100. The duration's a quarter note, and the median number is 60. Now let's go ahead and insert 3. If we say A is a note 3, what is that? That is basically a D sharp. What's the octave of that D sharp? It'll tell you it's a 5. The default volume of that A, or D sharp, it's 100. That value is 3, which we inputted, and the duration is a quarter. And what's the MIDI number? It's a 63. So not only is this good for music, but it's also good for math, and it's also good for programmers who want to learn music and for people who have a musical background to understand the structures and how Python works. Now, I talked about needing sequences or note sequences after you've identified the notes. There are various ways to input notes here. You can either do the letter and the octave value, or you can go ahead and put in the number like I showed you earlier. If you take a look, oh, also there's an error here. I forgot to import the module rest. Rest is actually a module on its own. That applies to Jython as well. So here you have C, which is note 0, rest, the value of 1, note C sharp in the 8th octave. And that will give you the C, R1, C sharp. If you just inputted rest, the default will render a quarter value for time, for your duration. If you look at the second to the last, you have note sequence G, G, E flat. The interesting thing about Pynon's library is that they don't recognize flats necessarily. If you put in a flat, it'll give you the sharp value. So if you have the E flat, you'll get a D sharp in return, which is basically the same note. So now that we have notes and sequences, I wanted to show off a bit with their harmonize feature. We're not going to harmonize with Beethoven or anything like that. That gets too complicated, but this was a really cool feature that I discovered while I was preparing the presentation. And I think it's really good for those who really want to learn music and also understand Python structures. So you have your C major, which is C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Now if you tell them, I want to harmonize the C major scale, which in Python is a triad, it gives you C, E, G. And if you want to get creative and say, you know, I want to go beyond the triad, I actually want, I want 4, give me 4 letters back. So you go ahead and say, I want to give a D major scale, it's going to be a D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and the C sharp. Give me a D major scale, harmonize that, but I want the size to be 4. And rather than limiting it to D, F sharp, and A, it'll actually include the next letter that would be part of the harmonize feature. So D, F sharp, A, C sharp. It's great, it's really fun. So now let's get back to this. The end game here is I want to play da-da-da-dun, da-da-da-dun, utilizing Pynon's library. I know what I have. I have a G, 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 E flat, F, 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 and a D, all in the 4th octave, or the 5th octave, the center of the keyboard. I know how that works in Jython, but how does that work in Pinon? I have my note name for 7773, 5552. Now if I want to go ahead and do that with letters with the corresponding octave, I go G5, 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 and D sharp 5, since E flat isn't recognized in that Pinon library. And then I go to F5, 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 and D5. So how does this look? There's a module, MIDI module. I have to import the module note sequence and note. And I defined my first line of notes, the sequence as note 7 with a duration of a quarter. So there's 3 of that. And the last note is going to be 3 with a duration of 1. Basically, it holds for a longer period. And then I have my MIDI number of tracks. I just have 1 track. My tempo will be set at 108. And the sequence for my notes, it's notes 1, first track. I go ahead and write the file, 5th, because I attempted this 10 times, so I had to note 10, MIDI file. And I was like, all right, let's go ahead and do this, because about 11 months ago, I wanted to upload this on SoundCloud and share it with the world, which was the reason why I left Jython environment for music. So I wanted to go ahead and do this. It's resolving host. Well, of course you would do that, so I did this. And that's that. Great. And so the ultimate goal here is to actually do a bunch of Beethoven compositions using Pinon and uploading them on SoundCloud. So it's very easy. If you want to get into this, go to Jython Environment for Music, download that zip file, start off with that, and once you're ready to play with math and with music and MIDI files, go ahead and check out Pinon Library by Pedro Kroger. And so, complete the circle. We have from a music sheet to music code to playing it to SoundCloud. If we have the music code, we can actually do some engraving to create the music sheet. You can do that with LilyPond. You can actually create some Python code and transfer it into a Lily file or convert it to a Lily file and upload it to LilyPond or Frescobaldi, and you will be able to create the music sheet based on the music code that you inputted. So here are some takeaways. The center of the keyboard at Jython is the 4th octave. For Pinon, it's the 5th octave. For the Lily, it's this interesting mark at the end of the letter. The environment, you have an isolated music for Jython. You can code from the command line in Pinon, and you can use AirSketch as an application to write music and play the music. The difficulty is very easy for Jython. For beginners, you can use Pinon as well, but also advanced programmers who want to play with music, who are musical composers and programmers, you can also use Pinon for that. And that's basically it, but before I end, I want to give a shout out and a big thank you, mahalo, to the PyCon committee and also to the PyHawaii group, Python users group out of Honolulu. Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you.
So everyone, we've got a few minutes for questions, so please come up to the mic and talk to Ria. Thank you.
Hello, wonderful talk. I'm a music idiot. So do you think that this would be useful for learning about music or how to play with music in a way?
I think it's a good way to learn about music notes. What does especially if you're an auditory learner, how does this sound? What does the letter F in the 5th octave sound? And also if you know or want to learn about MIDI numerical values for a note, this is a good way to approach it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi. Is it possible to define more instruments than just a piano with Pinon?
Yes, yes.
Do you know if either of these have support for other musical things like tremolo or like other music notation beyond just volume?
Oh, like musical notes, like the bass, the trombone, and violin, or?
No, that would be instruments, like
Or
you said.
play it.
But like I saw like a fermata in there or something like that.
Yeah, so that's one of the things why I left the Jython environment. I just couldn't find many musical players that would use the Python file. So that's one of the things, if there are any programmers there who want to play a Python player, that'd be great. I found a list of them, but they didn't seem to work. They were outdated. So if there's anything out there, that would be wonderful.
Hi, I'm Paul. There's some stuff going on with the micro Python community and music. And I noticed that you seem to be involved in notation. And there's going to be one of those meetups afterwards. And I was wondering, have you at all played with like the microbit or the MicroPython devices?
My first introduction to that, aside from the news and reading it on BBC, was yesterday and at the Education Summit on Sunday when Nick gave a talk. So no, it's pretty fascinating, and I would love to get involved, especially with all the the library, the music library it has. It actually has da-da-da-dum as the fifth in its library.
Yeah, there's been some really interesting developments, and there'll be a thing at 4.
Awesome. All right, if there are no other questions,
Thanks, everyone. If you have more questions or comments for Ria, please share them with her after the talk. Thanks, folks.